First, welcome to this Health and Wellbeing Board meeting on Thursday, 14th November 2024. So before we start, please let me remind you that the whole thing is being video and audio recorded. So if you leave your laptop open, it can be seen by the camera. And then Andrea just showed me how clearly we can see on the screen here. Yes, I was amazed at the accuracy or the precision of the camera. So please be careful, right? And don't reply to your emails. Okay. And before we start, as usual, we will introduce ourselves. And then when you speak, press the mic in front of you. Once you've finished it, please switch it off. Okay, I am Paul Ejil-Shelvan, Councillor for Cramlington South East. I chair Health and Wellbeing Board meeting.
Sorry, wrong one. Graham Sires, Clinical Lead at the ICB. I'm a GP in Alnwick in Northumberland.
Morning everyone, Jill O'Neill, Executive Director, Public Health, Communities and Inequalities here at NCC.
Veronica Jones, County Councillor for Ponteland West and the portfolio holder for improving public health and tackling inequalities.
Wendy Patterson, County Councillor for the Long Houghton Division and also portfolio holder for Caring for Adults. Sorry, I missed a row.
Yeah.
Jeff Watson, I'm a County Councillor and Cabinet Member for Healthy Lives.
Glenn Sanderson, Leader of the Council.
Anne Everton, Pharmacy Lead.
Morning, I'm Kevin Waring, Superintendent for Northumberland.
Good morning, I'm Steve Kennedy, Northumberland Fire and Rescue Service. I'm here on behalf of Graham Binnon, who can't make it, unfortunately. Thank you.
Good morning, I am Rachel Mitchison, Director of Delivery for Northumberland and North Tyneside for the Integrated Care Board.
Good morning, I'm Laura Jobson, Associate Director with CNTW, here on behalf of Chloe Mann this morning.
Morning everybody, I'm Ashley Easton. Bear with me because I've got a new title. I'm now the Head of Public Health Nursing for Gateshead and Northumberland with Operational Oversight, and I'm here on behalf of Russell Nightingale.
Good morning, I'm Sharon Williams. I'm a pharmacist and I'm here representing Community Pharmacy North of Tyne.
Hello, Abby Conway, Chief Exec of Citizens Advice Northumberland, representing the voluntary sector through Thrive.
Morning, Vicky McLeod, Director for Children, Young People and Families, and I will apologise, Chair, because I do need to leave a little bit earlier. Thank you.
Good morning, Peter Stanfield, Chair of Health Watch Northumberland.
Alistair Blair, Exec Medical Director at Northumbria.
Ross Wigham, Director of Communications, Northumbria Healthcare.
Yes, good morning everyone. I'm Lou Robert-Shaw, Deputy Director of Public Health here at Northumberland Council.
Democratic Services, Andrea Todd.
Chair, we have apologies from Mark Purvis, Guy Renner-Thompson, Neil Bradley, Graham Binnon, Hilary Porteous, Russell Nightingale and Brian Mulder.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting held on 10th October. Can I pass them on as a true record of what happened? Thank you. Thank you. Agreed. Any disclosures of interest? We have two major items today. JSNA strategy and pharmaceutical strategy. Are there any interest? None. We can see. Now we have two reports of the Cabinet Member for Tackling Inequalities. As I said, there is a JSNA annual report and pharmaceutical needs assessment. I think they will be introduced by Cabinet Member Veronica Jones. Please.
Totally right. It's a live website which provides essential intelligence about the health and well-being needs of our residents and helps us pinpoint inequalities and in particular areas or groups across the county. I think many of you will be familiar with the JSNA, but the website has been updated, improving the presentation and accessibility of the chapters. The purpose of this report is to update board members on its development and discuss the plans for future development. Those of you who haven't seen it, I'm sure you have, please have a look at it, but make sure you've got plenty of time available, because once you get onto it, you'll probably not leave for quite a while you get excited about going round all the sections. I find it fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation. Luke, I'll just pass over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Veronica. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me here today. So today we're going to give an update on our joint strategic needs and assets assessment, and it will be a bit of a look back at what where we've got to with it over the past couple of years, and then we'll move into a bit of a look forward at how we can take it forward. And we'd really appreciate your input and thoughts about areas we could perhaps focus on going forwards. So there's a unique pattern of health and well-being across Northumberland, and this is due to the distinctive population characteristics, the geography and places that we have, and also the history we have in Northumberland. So the pattern we see in Northumberland, like I say, is very unique. If we were to compare that to even close neighbours such as North Tyneside or Newcastle, we would look very different because of the unique nature of our place. The JSNA really draws together that local data and insights to help us better understand our population. And one way I've kind of thought about this is, I don't know if you remember those old Polaroid cameras that you take the picture and the photo comes straight out, and then before your eyes it develops from something that's a completely blank piece of paper, and then over time an image starts to appear, you see the outline, and then you eventually see it clearly. And that's a bit how I see the data and intelligence and the work that's done through the JSNA, is that as we draw together this data and intelligence, the picture of our local population becomes more clear. We begin to see it more clearly. And then when we see it more clearly, that enables us to tailor what we do through our services, through our strategies and policies, to really meet the needs of our own population. And as Veronica said, really pinpoint those points of inequality as well, so we can then harness all of our resources together to address and tackle those inequalities. So how do we develop the JSNA? Well, it really is a collaborative approach across this board. So it's a statutory duty of the Health and Wellbeing Board to develop this. So it's something we, over time all pitch into doing. So it does combine these key aspects of local statistics, community voice, professional insights and the wider evidence to give that rounded and balanced view of what the needs are. And over the past few years we've had quite a few topics developed and quite a bit of contribution from different members across this board. So even since I've been here for about a year, we've had contribution from public health, from the ICB, adult social care, regeneration, planning, Northumbria Trust, and VCSE organisations. And I'll give a bit of an example of that a little bit later in the presentation. So the kinds of topics that we've published over the last few years are up there on the screen. So really pleased with what we've been able to achieve. And actually in the paper that I've circulated before this, you can see the kind of timeline of when the new topics have come online. So there's a significant amount of information already on there. And then the bottom half of that table describes what we're continuing to work on at the moment. So there's a number of topics still in development that over the next few months, by the end of March next year, will have made it onto our JSNA website. So again, going back to my illustration, this is just creating a clearer and clearer picture of our population over time. So one thing I wanted to just note at this point was the input of my predecessor, Pam Lee, who spent a lot of time and effort really facilitating and coordinating with different people to draw together many of these topics. And she's moved on and retired now, and I've heard she's having a good retirement, for those of you who know her. But I just wanted to acknowledge that she did a lot of facilitation and coordination around this before I came in. So there is a bit more information on the paper that I've circulated that I'm sure you'll have seen. So what I thought we could do now is give you a bit of a look at the website and do a tour of it together. Just some of you may already have been and had a look, but I'll just give you the key areas. So I'll stop sharing this presentation. And it should magically come up. So this is the website that you land on when you search for the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment for Northumberland. And the first thing I want to highlight is on the landing page, we have this Northumberland at a glance dashboard, which just brings together some very high-level information about our population. Some statistics, some graphs and charts there that are kind of very introductory, and so that's why they're on the landing page, because they're just high-level statistics. But then we also have 4 main areas within the JSNA website. So it's broken down into starting well, living well, aging well, and building blocks. So all of those topics that I showed in the last slide are falling into one of these categories. So just for example, we can click through to living well. And when you go into living well also has a summary headline data dashboard, which has a fair amount of information in about various living well statistics and data. It also has within this a set of topics that have been aligned to this theme. So we've got drugs and alcohol, gambling, inclusive economy and health of work, sexual health, tobacco and zero suicide in this particular section. So we'll just go into gambling just to give you an idea of what it looks like at the next level. So within gambling, this is the most recent one that's been put up. It was just published a couple of weeks ago. So obviously I won't go through this in detail, but it basically covers the key prevalence of gambling, the types of gambling that happen. It looks at how different groups are affected by gambling. So it looks at age, sex, deprivation. It looks at how the North East compares with other areas of the country. And further down, it talks about some of the assets that we have in Northumberland that can support people who are struggling with gambling. So it has information about referrals to NHS Northern Gambling Clinic. It talks about the North East Gambling Network that we have and that we're part of. And it refers to various gambling charities that people can get support from in the North East. And this is really the common format of a lot of the Joint Strategic Needs and Assets assessments, is we highlight what the issue is, what the needs are, but also really highlight the assets. And that's something that we're really keen to continue to push in the North East. So, something else I just wanted to highlight is we also have a page on the census. So these are data specifically coming from the most recent census. So there's a page that goes through many of the issues there that come up. So one example here, distance travelled to work. In Northumberland, people generally travel further distances to work than other parts of the country. So it's that kind of thing you can see through the census page. And then we also have a ward profile tool where you can drill down to particular wards in Northumberland and have a summary of some of the data around that ward. So the first one that comes up is Alnwick, because it's A. So I'm sure they always get top of the list. But you can select other wards here and then the dashboard updates to give you some data, and most of this actually derives from the census data as well. So that's just a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what's in our JSNA website. I'll go back to this presentation. I think one thing I wanted to mention about developing the JSNA is that, of course, it is a product that we publish on our website, and that can be used for various purposes. But a lot of the benefit we get from it is in the process of developing the JSNA. So the conversations that are had in communities between professionals are really rich conversations, and then those are drawn into the insight that's behind the JSNA. So one example of this, I was involved in a group that got together to develop the musculoskeletal health JSNA topic. And we had people around the table from primary care, physios, occupational therapists. We had public health. We had members from Northumbria Trust, from the rheumatology department there. We had voluntary community sector partners come into that discussion. And that was the first time that group of people had sat around the table and talked about this issue. And there were various crossovers and synergies that people began to recognise in our conversations. So that did result in the publication of a nice, 4-page JSNA topic. But I guess I'd say there's a real strategic value in having those conversations and sitting down and talking it through. And actually off the back of that, there's a real enthusiasm to continue meeting for those professionals. So we're looking at forming a network of those professionals that can continue to develop those conversations that were started. So the resources that are generally needed, it is mainly officer time. Occasionally we might go out and do some local insight work with communities that may have a small amount of cost attached. But really, to develop a JSNA topic, we need topic expertise, and generally that's found within this, the organisations represented within this board. We need data and intelligence support, people who can provide that to the process, and I know many of the organisations here have officers who are able to work with data and analyse that and build up intelligence about the population. As NCC, we host the JSNA website, so we can deal with that technical side of it from that side. And then as public health, our role is really to facilitate that. So as I said, Pam Lee previously, and then moving on to myself and our data intelligence team within public health, we provide much of that facilitation support. So we've looked back a bit at where we've got to. We're really pleased with the website and how it's come together. It's a new website. It's got much stronger functionality within it. For example, the data dashboards automatically update when new data becomes available. It's much more easy to access and navigate, and the presentation of it is much stronger than it was previously. So we're really, really pleased to have the new website up and running. But looking forwards, we're beginning to think about what topics we want to add to our JSNA website. So here were some of the ideas that were put forward by some people I've spoken to over the past month or so. But I thought the rest of this session we could begin to brainstorm together, to think together about possibly strategic areas that we're working on over the next year that we could really use and benefit from having JSNA topics available for those. And as I mentioned before, the whole process of doing it can really feed into the development of strategic approaches. So some of the ideas that have come up. So there's the Institute of Health Equity work that's been going on, which we've all been part of as a board. And of course, the first two items are housing and then good work and employment. But then the third topic we're moving on to is best start in life. And you may have seen from the slide I put up previously, we don't have as much content to support that area. So that's one of the thoughts that we've had, is maybe we could develop some topics around that, possibly working with children's services and others in the room to develop some of those needs assessments. The There's also some work going on an ages and stages skills and school readiness. There's a developmental review under development, so a JSNA topic could perhaps support that strategic work. So that's just a couple of examples, and I won't go through them all on the screen, but when we open up for discussion, it would just be good to hear from yourselves what strategic work you've got on the horizon this year, and we can take away some of those suggestions and think about what we could prioritise. Of course, we have limited resources, so we'll have to pick a few things to focus on over the next year. But that was just the starter for 10. So, moving on to discussion. First question, really, are there any further topics that you as a board would suggest including within our plan for the next year as we develop this further? Maybe thinking about how it would inform our current strategic areas of work, how it links to our other priorities and priorities we have within health and wellbeing boards, such as the joint health and wellbeing strategy that's produced through this board. Also, perhaps if we could think about what resources we have within our own organisations that could support development of JSNA topics. Going back to what I said on a previous slide, it is a joint effort and something we need to collaborate, and at different times different members of the board get involved in giving some resource towards this. So that's brought me to the end of the introductory presentation, so it is over to yourselves to discuss. So I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a good overall presentation. Of course, you have also listed where all we need input from here. So are there any suggestions? Yes, Wendy, and then I come to you.
Thank you, Chair. Luke, this is really marvellous. I had a look at it last night, the website, and I wanted to take a little snippet out of it to put in my newsletter, but it won't allow you to do that. It's like a PDF, so it might be something to look at, unless you don't want anyone to copy it, I don't know. But my question is, we don't see mental health involved in this one?
Yes, we haven't got mental health chapters on there yet, but I think that is a good point. We did have it on, we were working on some long-term conditions topics last year, but I think we were advised that it would be better to leave this till the mental health transformation work had been completed before doing it. But I think that could well be something we could pick up for this year ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, Luke, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I looked at this report as well, and the thing that got me was that there hadn't been any work done, according to this, on dentistry. So I was pleased to see on that very last slide that you had oral health. I presume that includes dentistry, because I think that is a topic which is constantly coming back to haunt us. So we talk about it, but we actually don't seem to be able to resolve very much. So I'd like to see more work done on that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think that also includes fluoridization or something, isn't it? Oral strategy? No.
Yes.
Yes.
There's an oral health strategy planned to be developed in the next year. So I think we were thinking we could do topics linked into that. Thank you.
Any more? Yes, please.
Just to follow on in relation to the dentistry, so absolutely at a local level, the oral health work will look at also treatment options, but there is work happening at a regional level, is my understanding. Rachel, you might want to come in on that at an ICB level, looking at the regional approach to dentistry, because obviously it doesn't have boundaries. We are impacted by it, clearly, very much more so in the north of the area, but it would be a case of looking at the oral health needs to inform future commissions, of which dentistry is part of. So that would be the role of the JSNA, if that makes sense. To identify the needs, exactly, yeah. And then what is it, the preventative work that we can do to improve the inequalities that we have. But I don't know if you want to come in, Rachel, at all. Don't feel like you have to.
Okay. Yeah, Rachel, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just to agree. There is a lot of work. Obviously, dentistry is joined the Integrated Care Board for the first time, so we're obviously doing a lot of work as they get integrated into our organisation and working with them. And I know that Healthwatch has done a really big bit of work as well, and engagement, which will be going through our executive, and then I think we'll probably obviously will come out so we can see that. But I think what is really good is there's a bit more of a flexible approach, because we are very tied to national contracts, but we are trying to offer a slightly better offer for dentists to encourage them into certain areas, which things like the JSNA help us understand where the needs are. So there is a lot of work being done on that, and then hopefully we'll be able to share that with you shortly.
Alistair, please.
Really welcome the reports. It reads very well. I suppose particularly focusing on the ageing well, it's something that's really concerning us as a trust. We know that we have got a proportion of an ageing demographic that's disproportionate. The impact of that, if you wind forwards 15 years, is pretty massive in terms of the utilisation of healthcare. And also, paradoxically, if we don't have a lot of young people coming in, we've then got an elderly population with actually nobody around of working age that's then supporting them. So I think that focus is going to be really important going forwards, because we're going to have to think fairly radically different to be able to give those people a really good deal in their later life, but we won't be able to do it by doing what we're currently doing.
Thanks very much. Ageing well is one of the areas we've worked on over the past year, and we've got a few topics that have recently been published around that, and I think it's just keeping those refreshed over time as well. And also our Director of Public Health report that came out last year was focused on that issue, so I think it's a really good point to try and keep that at the centre of what we do.
Yeah, please. And then I'll come to you, Victoria.
Thanks, Chair. Luke, super report, really thought-provoking. One of the first thoughts it provoked for me was not having been around at the last time you did this. I wondered how the topics that have already been published were prioritised. Was it about data availability, or was it about mapping onto the previous strategy? And I also found myself wondering, because there's so many things we could map across this, and the inequalities of gender is kind of one of them. So if we look at it through an inequalities lens, I find myself thinking about health inclusion groups or inclusion health groups, and how we map that into here, because we could look at some of these things and prioritise those groups about which we are most concerned, or we could prioritise those about which we hear most in terms of volume of public contact with those services. So it's really a question about how did we do it last time. It's great that we can think about it this way this time, and how do we kind of get that overview?
Victoria, please. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I'm just wondering if we can have children within this a little bit more, and particularly I'm thinking about our vulnerable children who are our cared for children, our care leaving children, and when you look at their opportunities, they're vastly reduced, mortality rates are much reduced, mental health is much more prevalent in that group, a lot more of our leaving care cohort may well go on to be in prison, etc. So it would be really good if we could have a focus when I'm looking at around the complex social needs, maybe it's because of the trauma, etc. that they've experienced, would be good. And also where we talk about living well in the adult send, including transitions, I would like to see maybe the transitions from children's services into adult services around that as well. And happy to be part of anything that needs to be, or any of my staff to be as well.
Thank you. Graham, you have?
Thanks, Luke. Pam was a hard act to follow, so I think you have to be commended for carrying on the work, and actually what you've done is give us things that make us think, because there's an awful lot of thought-provoking things in there. I think JSNAA is it's a difficult acronym, and I think outside of these walls, when we go to other places like talking amongst primary care, they don't really understand where it fits in the tapestry of everything else we're telling them about around health and wellbeing strategy and the Northumberland plan. So I think we have to work hard to socialise and show what it could enable us to do. So I think as well as picking the topics, there is a thing about how do we then take those conversations forward, because I can remember when Pam asked people to attend a workshop in the spring, which the musculoskeletal last year, the musculoskeletal work came out of. A lot of people looked at that and thought, oh, that's an awful lot of our time to commit to a date, and what's it for? And therefore there's something about, you came to this is what we generated from it, and now it's going to lead to this, and it fits with all these other bits, and then we'll start to get more out of it, I think. And I think from a system board perspective, it is something around how do we make sure that the people who need to contribute understand why they're being asked to go to things like this, because they don't get to hear these conversations in the same way that we do. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm glad Graham has said that, because I wasn't sure whether to raise the point I wanted to make, because it's probably, it's not strategic and it's not intellectual, but I think this is such a good report. I think the website is sensational. It's bringing together all the work that we've been encouraging and fostering, and being grateful for our staff and all the others and partners bringing all this work together. But for me, there's an issue which is around Graham's point, basically, which is how do we actually get people to understand what this is about, and how do we get a bigger political grip is too strong a word, but how do we actually move this forward? For me, I really like starting well, living well, aging well, but I don't understand what the building blocks at the end is. So those are the three key things, looking at it from a political lens, that could form some form of a report or something to go to cabinet, or a sort of downsizing and making it clearer for people like me to understand exactly where we are, what we're doing, and how we're going to and what we're going to achieve, and what we're aiming to do, and how we're getting on with that. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So it's condensing all of this into a report, or a report that would then be more widely circulated, and with our partners and through the membership of this council and the understanding generally throughout the departments. Okay, I hope that's okay.
Understanding of what is this for, where is it leading to, the directions, and this one, yeah.
But I
so
would just
you
pick
prefer
up. Sorry, could I just pick up on the point about living well, aging well, and then building blocks? I don't get the building blocks bit.
Building blocks, yeah, housing and other things, those things that lead up to. Yeah, please, you will be the best person to explain to.
So thanks, Glenn. In relation to the building blocks within our joint health and wellbeing strategy, there's been quite a lot of research to say that when we talk about wider determinants, people don't actually understand the term wider determinants, but the building blocks of a good life are education, it's having good housing, it's having good transport links, it's having good employment. So summarised as the building blocks for a good life. So that's language that we're trying to get out there in more familiar words than wider determinants. So that's what sits under that section of the JSNAA. In relation to reports, hopefully under Councillor Jones's portfolio report, then we can easily structure that as starting well, living well and ageing well, and make sure that we summarise what the key needs are and what we're doing about that going forward. So that would be the political route to hopefully answer that question for you. And actually just quite timely, because our cross-party working group for tackling inequalities met yesterday, and Luke, it was presented there, wasn't it, to again showcase this new website. There's been a huge amount of work undertaken for the last 12 months to rebuild this website so it's more accessible and more useful, because we've undertaken quite a lot of what do people want from the website. Yes, we have to statutorily provide it, and it's one of my duties as DPH to have it, but so what? And actually it was talking with the likes of the voluntary sector who said we would find it helpful for writing funding bids if we could easily access the statistics, and the ward profiles in particular will be of relevance for local members. So we've, over the last 12 months, really tried to listen and change it to be more accessible. But that could come through any kind of political process that you would deem appropriate, Glenn. But I do take Graham's point. It's about the buy-in piece for this, isn't it? And once people have been part of a group, I think they get it and they're bought into it, but it's getting them in the room in the first place. So it will be the likes of Vicky yourself as championing it as Director of Children's Social Care to go, we need to do this. I need you and your team in there to then, you're then selling it. It's not just public health trying to sell their wares, because it isn't just ours. So
I think building blocks are basically ladder steps that lead on to our objectives. That's that. Probably there's a better word. Yes, Kevin, and then Abhi, you put the hand up, right?
No, thank you very much, Luke. I liked your analogy about the developing picture, and it's very clear to me what it's achieving. And just echoing what Jill just said there, it's really useful for us as an organisation having access to that, and it was really good to see, because it will help our community inspectors understand their community profile. So that's a good page they can go to. I haven't looked at the website yet, but does it include crime and antisocial behaviour reference to, given the impact it has on living well and across all the other areas?
It doesn't at the moment, no.
We've got the separate strategic community safety needs assessment and website, so that sits under a different statutory banner. But you're absolutely right, the crossover is essential, and we could probably do more along the lines of what Vicky was referring to around vulnerable populations instead of just topic based all the time, because I think that's where you would start to see crime and disorder coming through. For example, if it was focusing on ex-offenders was down as a potential population, for example. So we perhaps need to take a bit of thinking around how we cross-pollinate those two needs assessments.
Abhi, you want to say something? No, you didn't put your hand. Okay, sorry about this. I have two more. Sorry, yeah.
Mine's just a little bit of an offer really with regards to the next two chapters. So within Harrogate we have a Great Start in Life work stream with two sub-work streams around breastfeeding and infant feeding, healthy nutrition, and also a best start in life with a preparation for school readiness. So there's a level of expertise, data, that we would be happy to share support with Luke.
Thank you. Right. Any other comments from the floor? I have one comment actually. So when I was going through the website, it looked really good. I don't know how long it has been in the preparation. I understand it's 12 months, you just said, yeah. So it's really good, but that yellow bar, it is still under construction. I think it's time to remove it. Sometimes, it is kind of off-putting given the, I was expecting, there are going to be lots of blanks everywhere. But it's not. It's almost 90%, more than that. Occasionally we get some blank. So I think it's time to think about removing it. It's like sometimes you leave something in the fridge and it sits there with no one noticing it. So that's a small comment. So good. Thank you very much for all the contributions. Yes, we will think in terms of political, how to make. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, we are supposed to receive this annual report and review options and consider partners' resources to support JSNA development for 25-26. Of course, there are two refresh items, many refresh items, isn't it, for in the immediate future. I think smoking and vaping, separating them may be a good idea. And we look forward to your input from separating drug and alcohol, whether that's a good idea. So there are lots of things to come in, play for. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And can I just say, if people do have any further thoughts or ideas or want to feed anything in, then please do get in touch with myself. We're very happy to talk more. Thank you.
So the next item is pharmaceutical needs assessment to be explained by Anne. Thank you, Anne. It requires any introduction? Yes, Veronica would like to introduce before
Just a few words, really. I mean, recently, the Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny looked at access to GP access, which is really important to residents, and equally important is access to a pharmacy. So the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment is actually the responsibility of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and its purpose is to make sure that residents in Northumberland have reasonable access to pharmacy provision and address the gaps in our provision and any inequalities in that access. It also supports a range of public health issues such as, well, I'll leave those. And I think this report also includes the potential assessments for provision in Cramlington, Alnwick and Blythe. I think, you know, to me, one of the important things is that we get access to the pharmacy without affecting the viability of the ones that are already there. So I'll just pass over now.
Thank you. As you say, the purpose of this report is twofold: to update the Health and Wellbeing Board on the issues that we have faced over the last year, and also our forward work plan as we have to produce a new PNA by the 30th of September. It's a very timely time to come and talk to you. I don't know how many of you heard on the news this morning that pharmacists, or some pharmacists, have chosen to potentially work to rule from January by going to their official hours, which is 40 hours a week, and stopping doing additional services, which will potentially greatly hit the extra services that pharmacies provide, because they see that over the last 10 years, their funding has dropped by about 40%, according to the BBC this morning anyway. So they are financially stretched, and we've begun to see that financial stretch in the number of pharmacies we have and the number of hours they are open. We're lucky that in Cramlington we had a new pharmacy open on the Northumbria Health and Care Academy site. It's open at the moment, weekdays until 6 p.m. and on Sundays 1 till 6. So we have had a partial renewal of the extended services that Lloyd's in Sainsbury's gave. It's not everything that we had, but at least it is something. In Alnwick, there was an application to provide a new pharmacy. The Pharmaceutical Services Regulation Committee met, reviewed the application and refused it as it did not meet 7 of the criteria for opening an additional pharmacy. On the back of that, we are looking into the services in Alnwick to ensure that they are adequate for the population. The trouble is that Alnwick serves such a wide population, it's not just the town of Alnwick. And the doctor surgery will have patients from far and wide. The doctor surgery also provides dispensing services. But if pharmacies are going to provide additional services to help GPs out, we've got to make sure we've got adequate access to those. So along with Health Watch, we are looking at what patients feel about the services in Alnwick, and we will include that in the next PNA. We haven't heard yet about the application for a new pharmacy in Blythe following the closure of Boots in Newsham. I suspect it is something to do with the ICB being in transition from one set of organisational structures to another, and knowing the department involved, they have been hit by sickness and compassionate leave of the 2 most important people that support that. So we sit and wait. With regard to the new PNA, we have taken a slightly different approach this year. Rather than sending out a questionnaire to pharmacies about what services they provide, we have decided to undertake a series of visits to those pharmacies which have changed ownership, because they are the ones most likely to change what was previously offered with regard to services. So I'm currently undergoing a series of visits to the 14 pharmacies that have changed ownership. And I think that gives you an idea of just how volatile the community pharmacy market is. We've had 14 changes of ownership and 4 closures. The 4 closures were the Lloyds in Sainsbury's, and 3 Boots stores have closed. There's another 4 Boots stores that have been sold. But we are starting to see other multiples withdraw from small shops that don't meet their profitability criteria. So we are in great danger of losing valuable services in vulnerable communities. And so, as part of the exercise of producing the next PNA, we are going to risk assess our communities and what would happen if the pharmacy in that community were to close. So that will form quite a significant amount of our work this time. And I think at that, I will leave and take questions, if there are any.
With regards to Alnwick,
yes.
I don't know what the 7 points were, why they were turned down. I guess that's too technical for me to know. But what I do know is that there has been a problem in pharmacies in Alnwick for some time. I'm sure Graham will come in and enlighten us more. But I was very surprised to see that we turned down an extra pharmacy in Alnwick.
I've just written a message to Paul, actually. I didn't realise you were going to be so specific about Alnwick, and I need to declare an interest as a GP in Alnwick. So I think I would rather not comment. Actually, I've not been part of that decision-making process. The surgery was consulted as part of an LMC process, but that's not been any other process for me.
It was all on technical issues, and we can probably get the report on it. I think we have got it, which we can share with you, but it is sort of subsection X of a technical act that it didn't meet.
So is it redeemable?
I just hope it's just not a red tape,
Is it redeemable?
Fault that's going to prevent it happening, that's all.
Sorry. Is it redeemable? Are they, and then they can apply back? Or
They
this is the end
have put in an appeal against that.
Okay.
And we await the results of the appeal.
Thank you. Yes, Alistair.
One is do we also have a conflict of interest in minority? So I do also have a conflict of interest. I've got a minority interest in a local pharmacy. The bigger issue from a healthcare perspective is there's a great difference between planned prescriptions and the need for urgent prescriptions. What we find often is that patients use an online service. I do worry that they don't have the medication reviews and the personal instruction that they would get in a local pharmacy online. But if you're unwell or you need a medicine urgently, waiting 4 or 5 days for an online is not an appropriate, solution. You do get people who often want to see their GP urgently and then get the prescription down the line, which makes no sense at all. And I guess we need to really think within the pharmaceutical needs assessment, how do we make sure that the urgent provision of prescriptions is covered? Because at the moment they're given the same fee as a long-term prescription. So actually running the acute services is actually which is the most important, is actually probably the most expensive for pharmacies to run. And that's a national issue, but I think we need to really flag it, particularly in a rural environment as well, because people sometimes gravitate to online being the answer, but it can't be the answer for our unwell populations. It needs to be a bricks and mortar establishment by which people can get their prescriptions. And I think it's really important that we continue to be cognizant of that.
I think it's one of the things that we pointed out in the last PNA was how vital our network of 100-hour pharmacies were such that people knew where and when a pharmacy would be open. Well, we've lost one of those 100-hour pharmacies, and the others are now allowed, again, for purposes of viability, the government has allowed them to open for 72 hours, provided they are open till 9 p.m. each night, and that they don't reduce the hours that they're available on a Sunday. And we would be putting that in again, saying that this network in such a rural community, it's really important that people know where they can go, that there is adequate light, parking and safety for accessing those places. And that will remain one of our key goals in making sure if Tesco's in Berwick were to give up pharmacy, that would really disadvantage that community, because everybody within a sort of 40-mile radius knows that that Tesco's is open. And when I went up to Berwick and went to see the pharmacy manager there, they said that Sundays was their busiest day because they were the only place that was open. And they did, you know, they had to make sure they had plenty of staff on a Sunday, which I don't know that all 100-hour pharmacies have that sort of business going through them on a Sunday. But NHS 111 will direct people to those pharmacies on a Sunday.
Thank you. Wendy, you wanted to come? You want to say something? No, Wendy, and then you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for that. I was listening to the Work to Rule information this morning, and I think it is concerning, and I do have sympathy with the extra costs placed onto pharmacies. And I'm wondering whether or not, depending on whether this is settled, whether or not we should have you back in January. I'm thinking about, amongst many things, the dispensing of methadone, those kind of things.
Yeah, that is one of the services that they have said they would withdraw, and therefore it really hits the public health services that we commission, supervision of methadone, morning after pills, smoking, stop smoking services. We're really going to be hit hard because
yes,
those are the services that we've already identified as being needed by our population.
Absolutely. And just to mention Berwick, I was at Tesco in Berwick just last Thursday, and there was a lot of people waiting. And this was just through the day, people sitting down, people waiting. So I do share your concerns there, if anything should happen. Yeah.
Possibly a naive question and not particularly coming from a Health Watch perspective, but there is a user angle on this. I find myself wondering what flexibility we have, either as a council, a health and wellbeing board, or a locality, to flex the criteria, because it strikes me the pharmacy market is changing. The role of pharmacists is changing. Pharmacy First is definitely a very good direction to be going in, playing an increasing role for the communities and members of the public. Are we making decisions about acceptability of a provider bound by national criteria that aren't flexible enough to take account of variation in local need? Question one. And do we have powers or flexibility to influence commercial decisions by providers? They will close if they can't make a pharmacy commercially viable. Are there ways in which we could think more laterally about deploying funds available to us in order to provide a better service for our local communities if we are indeed bound by national decision-making criteria that aren't that flexible? Two questions, I guess.
It's a hard one. We are bound by national regulations, and the trouble is that we have taken advantage of goodwill in pharmacies for so long that we don't realise what basic services the government actually pays for. there's an awful lot of services that pharmacies provide over and above what they're paid for. And I think the other area, if they were to work to rule, so to speak, is Saturday morning services. A lot of pharmacies open out of, if you like, goodwill. It's not part of their 40-hour contract to open on a Saturday. And we're dependent upon, for working people, if they're going to get prescriptions locally, on pharmacies being open on a Saturday.
Yeah, a couple of points, and a lot of them have already been made, but just to echo both what Alistair said around the understanding the different client needs is going to be ever so more important than ever before. I think historically we've looked at population level and is there generally enough pharmacies in this community to serve them, but it's been very generic. I think if we do need to look at it much more through that inequalities lens this time round, yes, from a geographical perspective, but from our protected characteristics as well, and our inclusion groups too. So understanding how our young people access pharmacy, which could be online, but actually is that safe and okay compared to our older population. So I do think we need to do a deeper dive to understand the more granular needs. And also this is national context, as we know, so I suppose the question is for us to take away into regional ICB forums, into National Association of Directors of Public Health forums. What can we do nationally to influence and support the pharmacy profession? Because you're right, these are public health services that are going to be at risk, and our most vulnerable will be impacted the most, which will be the people who do need to have methadone services or emergency contraception. So the risk is that we see inequalities increase as a result of this. So it's what is the power and effort behind the Health and Wellbeing Board, because all Health and Wellbeing Boards will be having this conversation. So we need to think, well, what's that collective voice doing to support and influence?
Yeah, I think you put it very nicely, because that's what I was thinking about when you said urgent prescriptions versus normal prescriptions. So there are different needs, so we really need to push it at the national level, I think. Yeah, thank you, Graham. You wanted to come in.
We do sometimes have a member from the local pharmaceutical committee attends. Yes, here we are. So, Sharon, I would be really interested to hear your viewpoint on some of this in a second. To answer Peter's question, I believe, and Sharon will put me right on this, that it is possible to have local enhanced services to community pharmacy. But in terms of how we do that, it would be important not to shore up what should be in a national contract in some respects. So you've always got to be careful that you don't start doing something which actually needs to be solved nationally, because actually we've only got so many resources locally to use. But you can do that, I believe.
So, did you want me to say something? Yeah. So I do have to declare an interest as well. I am a pharmacist and a director of a local community pharmacy. Yesterday we had our North of Tyne LPC meeting, and we were discussing some of the pharmacy needs assessment, and obviously it's a great piece of work, and it's great that Anne's looking at it in a slightly different way this year, because there are there are things going on in the pharmacy market that's destabilising everything, and it's a really important piece of work to ensure that the pharmacy market stays stable, basically. And yes, the NPA have put out to pharmacists, asking, about what they would withdraw and service-wise and things like that. And we do a lot of stuff that we don't get paid for. Deliveries, and that's a big thing in Northumberland. We've got people going all over the place. We don't get a single penny for delivering anything. So, it's a tricky market to be in at the moment. Thinking about opening new pharmacies, it's really important to think about, well, what's that going to do to the existing pharmacies that are there? It's great for the population to have a new pharmacy, but if it's going to make somebody else down the road close, then, it's pointless. So, but, we are working as the committee as well. We've got some feedback to give to Anne about the risk assessment and things like that. So I think Anne Gunning will be coming back to us with some information about that.
I apologise, Sharon. I could remember Anne had been coming, and when I wrote down names, I didn't write down what you did on the pad, so I apologise for that.
I used to write to health secretaries. I think I did before with on behalf of the board. So I'm ready to write to another letter if there is any particular pressing one, like for example, meeting various needs. For me, that looks very, very important. And since you are there, I work in the university, but the university bosses are saying the NIC increase, employer increase, is going to make financial situations far more difficult. Do you think lots of pharmacies will be employing less pharmacists because of the increased employer contribution, or you are all exempted from that one?
So sorry, you're asking if there would be less jobs for pharmacists due to a loss of...
Pharmacy now employs certain pharmacists and they pay them. Now the employer contribution goes up. As a result, will there be a reduction in the number of people they employ? Is it possible? In that case, the service will even suffer.
Yeah.
That is why, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That was part of the discussions that people were implying yesterday. So, but it was said that we probably wouldn't be made exempt from those extra contributions.
And also, unfortunately, many of the support staff in a pharmacy are on minimum wage. Therefore, they're going to have a double whammy of minimum wage increasing as well as the employer's national insurance raise. And I think this is the straw that has broken the camel's back. And the NPA have come out and said, listen, no more. It's all very well for other members of the health professions to be exempted, but GPs haven't been exempted, and I don't think it has been well thought through about just how many other people who support the NHS are going to be affected. You know, people like hospices and various others. So,
and you use the word NPA, that means National
Pharmaceutical Association.
That's correct, thank you. Yeah, just a clarification, yeah. So I would assume that care homes, hospices, they all will be...
they're all going to be hit.
Yeah.
As unfortunately a lot of them have a lot of minimum wage jobs.
Abby?
The voluntary sector is not exempt.
Not exempted?
No. So it is the cause of significant concern across the voluntary sector. We are not, the only people who are exempt is the health service and the local authorities, and it needs to be looked at again. There's a lot of pressure that being put to bear. So if you do want to write a letter based on around the wider impact of the national insurance contributions, then the voluntary sector would stand very firmly with you in that regard.
Thank you. Peter, do you want?
Sorry, I was going to add, and I was declaring interest as well. My day job, I'm a registered provider of social housing and accommodation and care for the LD. But it's not just this particular pharmaceutical camel whose back has been broken. So those letters will be flying in from all directions. Those debates will end up in contract discussions, I guess, at the national pharmaceutical level as well. But the social care sector is as much, if not at greater risk than the health, and we should wear both our health and social hats when we think about the implications of this.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any other suggestions, questions, concerns? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you for a wonderful presentation and answering the questions. Okay, so that brings us to item number 5, forward plan. Please make a note of the forward plan. And Jill, you want to come in to say what we are going to do in the next meeting, December meeting, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. So once again, we have a closed development session on the 12th of December, which is with Institute of Health Equity. So it'll be moving into the detail of the data, following on from our conference, majoring on housing, and then we will be starting to turn towards good and fair employment and the task groups that are going to be established for that too. So that's going to be the 2 hours over in River Green again. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
So it will not be here?
No, it'll be River Green, closed session.
And I was also told January will be full of packed with the agenda. I think we finished it with 1 hour today, so take comfort. January is going to be full of lots of agenda items, and Graham will be chairing it as I am on holiday, so sorry, Graham, it was not planned. Okay, urgent business. As far as I know, there is no urgent business. So, as Jill said, date of next meeting is 12th December 2024, not here in River Green Centre. Thank you for coming and all your contributions as well. And have a very nice day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.